So we've been in the series, Home Wrecker series, and we've been looking at 5 wrecking balls and how to avoid them. And as I've said almost every time that we've preached on this series, it is applicable to our homes, husband-wife relationship, but because they are principles, remember that word from last week? Principles, everybody say the word. Principles. Principles are transcendent. They are applicable no matter where in time or any situation. Because these are principles, they are applicable to all relationships. I'm preaching most importantly along the lines of the husband-wife relationship, but they're applicable to all of our relationships. And so whether you're married or not married, whether you are hoping to be married or, God forbid, you're hoping not to be married, this is a real important thing for us to grasp how important these principles are. So if you would turn with me to the scriptures. If you don't have a Bible, we've got the scriptures up here, a smartphone, however you want to look at it. The title of this last message in the series is Lost in Translation, When Communication Breaks Down. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit." Then we also want to look at James 1:19. "My dear brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Finally, brethren," this is 1 Peter chapter 3 and verses 8 through 9. "Finally, all of you live in harmony with one another, be sympathetic, love as brothers, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil with evil or insult, but with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing." Finally, Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 12 says, "Words from a wise man's mouth are..." Wow, that's a great word, isn't it? "Words from a wise man's mouth are gracious, but a fool is consumed by his own lips." Now, this is a little bit different. It's not an expository sermon taking just one passage and taking and building the points on it. It's more of a textual, topical type message, but the Word of God has a lot to say about communication. And so we want to look at when communication breaks down, because life and death are in the power of our tongue. We must remember that to have life-giving communication, we must first listen. Now, James 1:19, we read it. It says, "Brothers, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen." You know what we're quick to do? We're quick to talk. We're quick to speak. We aren't as quick to listen. And notice I use the word "we," because when I'm preaching this, I'm preaching at me. You know, I need to be quick to listen. You know, many say that the average American English speaker engaged in a friendly conversation speaks at approximately so many words per minute. How many words per minute do you think the average American English speaker can speak? Venture to say, anybody? You're very good, because it's approximately 110 to 150 words per minute, the average American speaker. That is unlike this guy. Take a look at this. You'll recognize this.
Okay, Eunice, travel plans. I need to be in New York on Monday, LA on Tuesday, New York on Wednesday, LA on Thursday, New York on Friday. Got it?
Got it.
Got it. So you want to work here? What really makes you think you deserve a job here?
Well, sir, I think on my feet I'm good figures and I have a sharp mind.
Excellent. Can you start on Monday?
Yes, sir, absolutely, without hesitation.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And in conclusion, Jim, Bill, Bob, Call, Fred, Load, Dork, Abe, and Ted. Business is business, and as we all know, in order to get something done, you gotta do something. In order to do something, we gotta get to work, so let's get to work. Thank you for tuning in. Petey, you did a bang-up job. I'm putting you in charge of Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, perfect.
I know it's perfect, Petey. That's why I picked Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's perfect. Petey, may I call you Pete?
Call me Pete.
Pete.
There's a Schnittler here to see you.
Tell him to wait 15 seconds.
Can you wait 15 seconds?
I'll wait 15 seconds.
Congratulations on your deal in Denver, Dave. I'm putting you down to deal with Dallas. Don, is it a deal? Do we have a deal? It's a deal. I gotta go. I got a call coming in. Hi, Doc. Just...
Probably remember that. That's an old FedEx commercial with John Machete. And John is the one who was credited as being the world's fastest talker with the ability to articulate, now we said 110 to 150, but John could articulate 586 words per minute. When asked how he learned to talk so quick, he said, I was raised with 5 sisters and I needed to talk as fast as I could to get a word in. Now, I'm told that John is talking at the threshold of the speed about which the average person is able to comprehend. I'm sure that few of us heard exactly every word that he spoke, but he was just right at the edge of comprehension. Because the truth is that we think at a rate of 3 to 4 times the average rate of speech. So if the average person speaks at about 110 to 150, when you hit 600 words per minute, you are at the max that the mind is able to comprehend. Now, this creates trouble for us. Communication begins to break down because instead of truly listening, when somebody's speaking at about 110 to 150 words a minute, what's happening is that we have a lot of time left in hearing the 110 to 150 because we can think at about 600 words per minute. So you begin to think about, especially if somebody's telling you something, I need to tell them about this, and we begin to articulate in our head. Or we begin to think about other things. Our minds just goes off otherwhere. So it's no wonder that the Bible instructs us in regard to communication that everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak. Let me give you a couple of keys to listening first. First of all, I want to tell you that if you want to listen first, listen with your head. He said, Pastor, of course I'm going to listen with my head. Well, I want to tell you a little bit more. Let me explain to you what I mean by listening to your head. I mean, don't only listen with your ears, but listen with your eyes. I'm listening to an audiobook called Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. Interesting book. It starts out by talking about how hush puppies were about to die. The shoe hush puppies, you know, not the thing we eat down here in South, but the shoe hush puppies. They will never die, the things we eat down here, right? The shoe hush puppies were just about, they are almost at the decision to get rid of them, and all of a sudden there was this resurgence in purchase because of a trend that happened. And I can't articulate the whole book and idea to you, but Malcolm, in the development of this tipping point thing, talks about how that micro expressions of people when talking about something, and this is especially true with salesmen, begin to communicate even on a subliminal level to people that they don't even realize. And so I'm saying to us, if we're going to be quick to listen, we need to make sure that we are not only listening with our ears, but we are listening to our eyes. When our husband or wife is saying something to us, what is their body language saying to us? You know, if my husband or wife says to me, you know, if I'm saying, are you mad at me? And they're standing there with their arms crossed like this and saying, no, I'm not mad at you. Yeah, there's some communication going on. They're saying one thing with their lips and their mouth, but they're saying something else with their expressions in their body. Body language communicates. You know, actually, there were several TV series that were developed with the idea of reading people's micro-expressions. How many of you watch Dr. Bull? Do you watch Dr. Bull about trial science? Actually, Dr. Bull, let me tell you this. Dr. Bull, that TV series is based on what Dr. Phil McGraw did in Dallas with trial sciences before he had his TV series. And it was all in reading micro-expressions. There was a series called Lie to Me that they were able, by looking at people's eyes and by their body and their language. So good communication it depends on listening carefully to what is being said with both my eyes and my ears. God said, be slow to speak. Be an active listener. And I would encourage you to do that. Second thing, I said two things in listening, to being a good listener in communication. The second thing is not only listen with your eyes and your head, listen with your heart. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that listen to the emotion or what is behind the words that is being said. And so find the emotional content of the speaker. Listen first is what we are told if we want to avoid the wrecking ball of communication. Second, because life and death are in the power of the tongue, we must remember to have life-giving communication. As we saw in that very first video, we must realize the power of our words. The power of our words. The tongue has the power of life and death. Now, there was a concept, and I began to think about this as the Lord put this message on my heart. It was called the butterfly effect. How many have ever heard of the butterfly effect? There's been movies made on it. Actually, the idea of the butterfly effect, it's a concept that small, seemingly insignificant things can and do have monumental impacts. You know, Edward Lorenz postulated in the 1960s, catch this, he postulated that a butterfly flapping its wings in South America could affect the air molecules and set in motion a movement that could start a tornado on the other side of the planet. Woo! And you know what? When he postulated that to the to the New York Academy of Sciences, he was laughed out of the building. But they've come back to see that there is great truth to this. Incredible. But I propose to you today, in regard to communication, that our words can and do have a butterfly effect on our relationships. Small, seemingly insignificant words. Think of it. Something seeming so incongruous and small as words literally have, the Bible says, the power of creating life and death. The book of James, the apostle, in writing about this power, he likens the butterfly effect to a small spark that can create a forest fire. And therefore, we must realize the power of our words. And in doing that, let me suggest to you, if we're going to avoid the wrecking ball of communication breaking down, we should first of all make sure that we are choosing words that help instead of hinder. And that we should choose words that heal instead of hurt. So we want to avoid this wrecking ball and do these things. Thirdly, if we are going to avoid this wrecking ball that will cause communication to break down, Ecclesiastes tells us that words from a wise man's mouth are gracious. And I want to suggest to you that we invest daily in our words. Now, I don't know if you've ever thought about that or not, but there's an investment that we can make with our words. Take a look at this video with me.
All right, 60-second spot on time. Can I have a clock in the corner?
It's there.
Thank you. Rolo?
Rolling.
Action.
Okay, here's the deal. We all know that life is busy. There aren't enough hours in the day to do all the things that we want and need to do. In fact, you're probably thinking of all the things you need to do next week right now, wondering how you're going to squeeze it all in. But the fact is, no matter who you are, no matter what you do, no matter how much is on your plate, we all have the same gift of 24 hours each day. It's 24 hours, 1,440 minutes, 86,400 seconds. All the money in the world won't let you buy one single second more than the next guy. And once that second is gone, it's gone forever. Look, there goes one right now. Another one, gone. You'd think that we would judiciously use such a limited and valuable gift. You'd think that we would choose wisely how to spend. No, invest our time. But do we? Really? And after taking the time for eating and sleeping and all the other basic necessities, do we really use this gift the way we should? Think of all the great things you could do in 24 hours, all the lives you could touch, all the significant changes that could be made in your life and others. The fact is, you could actually make a difference in this world in 24 hours, or not. So, how are you investing your time?
Think about that. You know, just 24 hours, nobody else gets any more than 24 hours. And for a couple of minutes, I want us to think about investing in our words in our relationship. You know, and I want us to think about words in terms of investing. Words, according to James, tell us, have the power to grow and give life in relationships, whether it's a marriage relationship or other, or the power to depreciate a relationship, eventually bringing death. Proverbs 18:21. Now, investments, whether financial or relational should always be viewed in terms of long term. You know, if you're going to make anything out of an investment, you can't expect just 1 hour or 1 day or 1 week or 1 month or even a year to get any type of great return. So in regard to terms of long term, I love what Warren Buffett, the American investor and philanthropist, says about investments. He says, our favorite holding period is forever. And so in that same term, the Bible encourages that if you want to build a marriage that lasts all of your lifetime, you need to make investments in that marriage. So with this in mind, we should make investments with our words that will grow them and make words that make powerful, appreciating deposits. So let me suggest to us a couple of investments with our words. So we need to know that if we are going to avoid this wrecking ball of communication, we're going to have to be intentional in our daily dialogue with one another. Now, we live in a day that we're distracted. You know, I mean, we've always got these, don't we? I mean, it's in my pocket here. I've got it on silent now so that I'm not distracted by it. Because if it goes off, what is my tendency? I want to look at it, you know? And, you know, there's my email, and now, you know, you can buy a smart TV, and that smart TV can connect to Facebook right there. And, I mean, we are so connected, and it can be such a blessing. But if we're not careful, we won't have dialogue with one another. We won't talk with one another. And so I'm suggesting if you want to avoid the wrecking ball of communication breaking down, intentionally dialogue with your husband or your wife. If things are difficult between the two of you, you might want to keep the questions positive and not initially tackle those tough subjects. You know, there can be questions centering on, you know, I was just thinking, honey, what's the best date we ever had? If we ever had a dream vacation, what would that dream vacation look like? Just keep the positive direction, and positive questions are important to help focus on what is going well in your relationship. A major goal of the dialogue, catch this, is to speak about good going on, not just problems. Now, I know if there's difficulty there, you're thinking, well, we won't ever then get to the difficult things. I know this, having worked with husbands and wives for decades, that when we get in trouble in our marriage, the tendency is to see everything wrong with it. You don't do this, you don't do that. And when we start to see everything wrong with it, we forget about what's good with it. And I'm suggesting to you, if we're going to see a relationship that's in trouble turn around, we must step back a little bit and begin to see the good things in our marriage and in that person that's around us. And then once we've drawn back and begun to see some of the good things, the things that are needing to be addressed then can be. Remember, the purpose of dialogue is to get you connected with one another. It's not to change or manipulate, but it's to get you connected. Try and understand and accept one another. So first of all, the first tip in having this dialogue and investing in our words is the daily dialogue. And then the second thing that I want you to grasp, and I want you to not only grasp it mentally, I want you to do this. Now, can I tell you that when I'm involved in premarital coaching with couples that come to me that want to get married, one of the things that I teach them is that to make sure that they give their spouse daily compliments. Daily compliments. It's easy to do this when we're first married. How many have been married more than 5 years? Put your hand up. Okay? How many have been married more than 10 years? Let me see your hand. Put your hand up. Well, let's jump. How many have been married more than 40 years? Let me see your hand. Woo! Come on, these folks need a hand. Woo! Anybody here that's been married 50 years or more? 50 years or more. We've got Walter and Joyce over here. Come on, give them a hand. Walter and Joyce. I didn't plan to do this, but how many, should I ask him how many years? How many years, Walter?
51, I guess.
Coming up on 52, Pastor.
Coming up, he's been 51 years, coming up on 52 years of marriage. Some of us newbies need to get with them and find out what their secret is. I'm sure that they've had daily dialogue and daily compliments. If you're having a struggle with the daily compliments, why don't you ask the Lord to help you to see your spouse with new eyes? I believe in the power of prayer. Ask God to help you to see your spouse with new and fresh eyes, to help you see the positive things, big things, little things to be appreciative of. And then, think back about what attracted you to him or her. And let me prime your pump of compliments maybe with a few suggestions that you can tailor. Some of the templates that you can use for daily compliments are, I appreciate all of the things that you have done and are doing for me. And you can put into that some of those things. This past weekend, I was, as I shared with you if you were here last week, I was alone for the weekend as Elka's mother, Erna, and Elka had flown up to Detroit for a funeral. And man, I was shocked at how much longer it took me to get out of the house, at all of the little things they do for me in helping me. It was incredible, the time that was needed in that. And, the sink filled up with dishes and, Mom usually takes care of all those dishes. I know I'm spoiled. I am really blessed. But anyway, I began to see all the little things. God help us to see those things and to express our appreciation. maybe this compliment could be for you. You should say, you come before our children and my career. Just a template for you to use. I'm glad I married you. You look great today. I will always love you. I will always trust you. And this one, it maybe could be seen negative or positive, but what if you said, hey, honey, pray for us today? I mean, that might say, well, why do we need to pray? Well, I'm just so glad God has given us life together, and I want his continued blessing and favor on our lives. And then, you might say, you make each day brighter. I treasure every moment we spend together. Just trying to prime the pump for us today in daily compliments. I guarantee you, if you will have daily dialogue and you will insert daily compliments into your marriage, you will see if you will be just committed to it and steadfast in doing it for 30 days. This is a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you will do it for 30 days, you will see a tremendous blessing in your house and in your relationship. We're talking about avoiding 5 wrecking balls. The final one we want to look at in avoiding communication breakdown is we ought to speak to understand, not to judge. Now, as human beings, I think it's the fall and sin that has entered us that we all have to battle, that we can be so judgmental. And we can see the negatives all the time. And so when we speak in regard to something, we need to speak to understand and not to judge. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 8 through 9, in speaking about marriage relationships and all relationships, says, live in harmony with one another, be sympathetic, love as brothers, be compassionate and humble, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult, but with blessing. So if I'm going to avoid this wrecking ball of communication breakdown, I must remove evil and insult from the vocabulary with my spouse, and my words must be words that are words of blessing. So therefore, there's 3 things I need to be intentional about. First of all, I need to speak carefully. Everybody say the word carefully. Carefully. Secondly, I must speak truthfully. Say truthfully. Truthfully. And thirdly, I must speak lovingly. Say that with me. Lovingly. So carefully, what do I mean here? What I mean is this: I need to be careful because it's not just what I say, it's how I say it. Maybe even more important, how I say it. We first moved to Texas. We stayed with Elka's middle brother, Werner, and wife, Heidi, and we lived there with them for a while. And they had this little dog. I think the dog's name was Abby. And Werner would do this thing with the dog, and see, the dog can't pick up on sarcasm and emotion in words like we can. But he'd call the dog, come here, Abby, you stupid little dog. You are so ugly, and the dog just stand there and wag his tail. People pick up on that. Dog might not, but people pick up on that. Speak your words carefully, because it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. And secondly, speak truthfully. Now, when speaking difficult news or correction with words, it needs to be done with tenderness, and sensitivity towards the recipient. Did you notice this text says not evil with insult? You are not trying to just zing them and get back at them, but this is with tenderness and sensitivity. And finally, lovingly. This takes us back to this idea of carefully. How I say, what I say. Perhaps it's best understood in the packaging of the word spoken. The packaging of words spoken. Let me give you this illustration. Think of your words kind of as a product, something you hope to sell to someone else. Most products begin their lives in the engineering department. That's where the original concept and the design are developed. But once the original design is complete, the product leaves engineering and goes to marketing. And that's where decisions are made about how the product should be packaged. And so if I need to be careful on how I package what I say so that it will be received in the right way, so it'll be received in the first place. I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not, but the Apostle Paul was an expert at packaging words to his audience. I challenge you to read through the epistles that Paul wrote, and you will find that when Paul begins to speak to the church, even though he had something that they needed to correct in their behavior, he spoke in such a way that he praised them, and he packaged his letter in such a way that the audience said, I want to hear what he has to say. We must speak our words carefully, truthfully, and lovingly. As Christ followers, what we say should be thoughtfully considered and truth that is packaged in tender words. Ken Blanchard and Barbara Glanz did some training with 3,000 frontline workers at grocery stores. Not only grocery stores, but retail outlets across the country. They talked about the power of words and how what we say really does make a difference in people's lives. A month after teaching, Barbara got a call from a guy named Johnny who was at the training. Johnny told her early on, I'm 19 years old and I have Down syndrome. I work as a bagger at a grocery store. He said, I went back to the store and I didn't know how to apply your statements. I liked your talk, Miss Barbara, but I didn't know what to do with it. I went home and talked with my dad and I got an idea. My dad and I sat down at the computer, and every day we would come up with a statement that is affirming of people, that's encouraging. If I can't find one in a little quote book, I'll make it up. We'll type up 6 different times on the computer, and I print off 50 sheets and cut all of them. So he has 300 of these quotes. And then every night, Johnny signs each one of them personally. Johnny. The next day at the grocery store, he puts his stack right by where he bags the groceries. He gets everyone's groceries bagged up, and then on the last sack, he puts the quote of the day with the encouraging word in the sack, and he makes sure he looks them right in the eye and says, I put something special in the bag for you today. I hope it will brighten your day. Now, that's amazing in itself, but wait till you hear the rest of the story. He'll take the groceries out to their car, and Johnny does this every single day. Barbara said after a month, she got a phone call from the manager of the grocery store. He said, Barbara, I can't believe it. Something really amazing is beginning to happen. I was walking around the store, and I noticed that we had lots of checkers and checkout lines open, but there was maybe 1 or 2 people there, and the line where Johnny was doing the bagging went all the way back to the frozen food section. One woman came by, and he said, we would tell them over the intercom that there were other lines you could move over to, and we'd walk down the line and tell people there were other lines open. People would just look at us and say, no, we'll wait because we want Johnny's encouraging word for today. One woman came by, grabbed the supervisor, and she said, I used to come only for the grocery store once a week or once every other week. Now I come by almost every day. I buy something just so I can get Johnny's encouraging word for the day. There's two things that speaks to me about. One is the power that's in that. The second is people are starving to be encouraged. About a month later, the store manager called Barbara and said, it's changed our entire culture. Even in the floral department, when a flower was broken, we used to just throw it away. Now they're walking out into the lines on their own initiative, and they're pinning onto elderly women or young girls a flower to brighten their day. There are always a lot of people at the grocery store, but the most important person is Johnny, the bagger. He's speaking words of life, words that change the culture. And I tell you, it can happen. If it can happen in a grocery store, it can happen in our marriages. It can happen in our relationships with those people, our children and our family. And if there's one place that we should speak words of life and avoid the wrecking ball of communication, it's in our homes. Would you stand together with me?